Evening, everyone. This is the Burlington Police Commission meeting for Tuesday, July 25th. We have quorum, and we will get started. We are expecting at least one other commissioner to join online. I don't know, Keaton, if you can get into Zoom and see if they are there. And we are expecting a commissioner online and see if we can. Okay, all right. They're not there yet, okay. Hold on, we do have, you will have an opportunity as I open it up for public forum, okay? Thanks. Okay, yeah, sure, I'll give you, let's get it done, right?
And we don't even have a time limit.
So, welcome, everyone. To begin with, we have a quorum, and let's get started. A motion to adopt or amend the agenda.
So moved.
I'd like to make an amendment.
Okay, Commissioner Cox, an amendment to the agenda.
So I'd like to amend item 6.2 to read discussion. Let me say this better. I'd like item 6.2 to say discussion of the issues raised by commission members in the presentation to the joint committee.
So amended. Do people have any questions or? Okay, moved. Okay, yeah, sure.
I'll second that.
Okay, second from Commissioner Oski. All those in favor of adopting, say aye.
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 All right.
And wait, Keaton, are you taking minutes?
Okay.
So just make sure you write down like what the change is. Okay, perfect. Okay, so it's now reads discussion of the issues raised by commission members in the presentation to the joint committee.
Okay, a motion to table the approval of commission meetings from the June 2023 until August 2023 meeting. We don't have the minutes prepared because we had a staff change. So that's the motion. Any seconds?
Second.
Commissioner Cox, seconds? Second, oh, so moved. I'm doing this for the first time, so please bear with me. This is my first time running this meeting.
Say
All in favor of
Aye.
adopting, say aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, we are on 3, public forum. If people want to speak, please mention your name and go ahead and you have a few moments.
Thank you. I'm Bruce Wilson. Oh, jeez, Chris. And I've been in Vermont since 1989. You know what I'm saying? I've been in a lot of programs around the state of Vermont with our youth programs and murals and all kind of things we do. If you look up Bruce Wilson, you can see who I am. I'm also a commissioner for the state of Vermont. For the Human Rights Commissioner, I'm a commissioner for the city of Winooski. I'm a commissioner for Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. And I work with on the central level with our governors and senators and mayors and all things I've done since 1989. And I work primarily within Burlington. I work with the chiefs around the state, all the chiefs around the state, and Chittenden County. I work with the Vermont. I work with a lot of people. So for us, what I do is serve the community. We have over 50 awards. We've done over 700 events, and we created a lot of events for the city of Burlington, and we've done a lot of events for the state. Period. And so I'm here to talk about continue to do as a person of color. There's not many. There's 0.1% of African Americans in the state of Vermont, and I'm here to talk about how can we make sure diversity, equity, inclusion is involved. I know I work with the director from Kim Carson, and all around the state for what I do. I work on Green Mountain Transit, justice, equity, and diversity, inclusion, Burlington School District for anti-racism. I work for a lot of programs around the state, all right? And so, it seems like it's not enough for people who look like me. It's still, I work for the State Police Advisory Board in economic FIP, for Impartial Policing and Community. It's still in Vermont, Burlington Police. It's still 85% of people who look like me, 85% of people who look like me, we 1.0% of people who look like me are still ticketed and stopped in whatever we are, what I'm saying? It's pitiful. It's pitiful around the state. It's so with the Vermont State Police. It's only it's 15. So we are, what is it? 0.1% African Americans in the state of Vermont, and 85% of us are still being stopped in the police around the state. What the? Come on, that ain't make no shit to me. Listen, I'm pissed off about that, and I'm on all these boards. You know what I'm saying? And you look at my name up, y'all probably already know me. You know what I'm saying? It's pitiful. Why is that? Why is that people who look like me, 85%, and we're only 0.1% of people who look like me are being stopped in the state of Vermont for traffic for all these reasons? And I've been working on these issues since, God knows, 2001. I'm a founding member of the Community Justice Centers around the state. I created Community Justice in 1998. I created Community Justice Centers. And since that time, the same numbers are the same. You stop black people in the state of Vermont, 85%, and we're only 0.1% in the state. Why is that? Why? I know I came here as the whitest state in America. Now it's like this so-called second whitest state. I have ideas why. Because I sit on all these boards across the state. I have ideas, because I lived in Vermont since 1989. I'm pissed off. Shit. Listen, I'm telling you, I ain't for that shit. You know what I'm saying? It's only me. Seem like it. And I work with the people who looks like me. Shit's gotta change. I mean it. It's gotta change. Well, how it's gonna change? How are we gonna stop? Listen. I'm from Chicago. All right? I've been in Vermont since 1989. I ain't bad nobody. I've been in trouble myself, you know what I'm saying? But I graduated from Northwestern University. I have a master's degree in psychology. That's just me. Master's degree in psychology. I open up every youth center in the malls and across the state. You know what I'm saying? Y'all know me, Bruce. I have an art center in the University of Mount called Art So Wonderful. You know what I'm saying? We work with youth and families and community free for them. Give them an opportunity to have healthy outlets, help them with their goals and aspirations, help them with their dreams, I work in all the jails. Straight Talk Vermont. You probably know about it. It's an incredible program around the state of Vermont. We help them with their job settlement, mentoring, tutoring. We help them with getting reentry into community successfully since 1989. And so many people, if you say Straight Talk Vermont, people know the jails, all facilities know. They know about Straight Talk Vermont. You know what I'm saying? But still, white people are still walking up to black people and saying, and harassing them and stopping them because they driving the Benz and hitting, got Biggie music on, whatever. Why? How are we getting better? Oh, I know how we got better. We're the second white state in America now. It's not the first. Listen. I'm telling you. Like I said, I'm a commissioner for the Human Rights Commission. I'm a commissioner, Winooski. I work on the school district for Winooski, anti-racism, Green Mountain Transit, anti-justice, equity, and diversity. I sit on all these boards. Listen, what we got to do, diversity, equity, and inclusion, justice, equity, division, inclusion. All our boards, racial, equity, inclusion, and belonging, it's bullshit. Sorry, it is. Because everybody said, oh, we got these policies. Even state police of Vermont got the Federal Prosecution Police, you got an incredible website. Even the Burlington, I'm going to say one more thing, I'm going to go. They have an incredible website. It's right there. It says all the wonderful things they do. You know, I work with all the chiefs around the state. They know me. You say Bruce Wilson, they know me. Say Bruce. I got to where it says Bruce now, because you look at me and I'm Bruce. But I'm going to tell you something. It's all bullshit. It's a policy. It's a procedure. It's just objectives. It's all that. I'm about to go now. But I'm trying to say how we can make this really work in Vermont. The whitest state is still the whitest state in Vermont. Listen, you talk to the mayor, you talk to the governor, and they know me, and they will tell you that I'm like this with all of them. I sit on the central level. I'm sorry, but I'm a little emotional. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so, do you have any ideas? How are we going to change this stuff? Policy, procedures? Chief, you know how we're going to do this? Feels like, oh, this is a black guy, he's talking good shit. You know Bruce Wilson for years. How are we going to make sure shit's changed? Come on, man. You know what? Come out the back room, get people like me, Romeo in the room, talk about how we can do this, get our constituents, and let's figure it out. I am pissed off. I'm telling you. Listen, I know how to do it, and I'm telling you, I'm gonna make it work because all my constituents who are commissioners, board, lawyers, we're gonna change. We're gonna change this. We're gonna change constituents. We're gonna change people who are in charge. I have the power. You believe me? I am so powerful in this state. Guess what? We're gonna change shit. We're gonna change how the elected officials, who's in charge. We're gonna do it. It's not. You think I can't? Watch me.
Mr. Wilson, thank you so much for your impassioned speech. Thank you so much. Anyone else? Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Bruce, for that passionate statement.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Your time is over. Let's hear somebody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner. Thank you for having me today. My name is Romeo. I am a resident here in Burlington, Vermont, Ward 8, soon to be Ward 6. I'm here today to address a matter of utmost importance, which is significant of public safety and growing concern of random attacks on innocent people in and around our city. Like what happened to Kelly Carson. I hope I'm spelling her or saying her name right. May her soul rest in peace. I think you've heard that in the news of what happened to her at the park. In a world that is rapidly evolving, it is our responsibility to ensure that our communities remain secure and free from harm. Public safety of all forms are the bedrock of any thriving society. It is the assurance that we can walk the streets, travel, work, and enjoy our lives without constant fear. It's the belief that children can play in the parks and the adults can take evening strolls without having to face threat of violence. We can safeguard public safety and foster an environment of trust, harmony, and progress. However, in recent times, we're witnessing random attacks on innocent people here in the city. These incidents are causing pain, trauma to the families. It is heartbreaking to learn what happened to Kelly, and I keep bringing up her name because it's rather unfortunate what happened to her, and it's really regretful. We must be clear in our stance that such actions are completely unacceptable. They not only violate the basic principles of humanity, but also undermine the fabric of our society. Our strength lies in our unity, our ability to come together as one, and our shared commitment to building better and safer world for everybody here in our city. To address this issue today, we need multi-phased approach. First and foremost, it is crucial to strengthen and support our law enforcement agencies. They play a vital role in maintaining law and order, but they also need the necessary resources and training to handle emerging challenges in our city. This includes mental health and substance abuse disorder, how to deal with them, which I commend on our current leadership at the department, working extremely hard in addressing these issues. And I know it's not easy for them, but it takes a community to wrap around with our department members to make sure everything is done right. Secondly, we must promote a culture of inclusivity and tolerance, embrace diversity, which enriches our communities and breaks down barriers of misunderstanding and prejudice. By celebrating our differences and understanding one another, we can create a society where hate has no place in our city. And I promise to be quick, but furthermore, community engagement is paramount. Together we can foster a sense of belonging and shared responsibility for the safety of our neighborhoods. Neighbors looking out for each other, reporting suspicious activities, working hand in hand with law enforcement can be powerful deterrents for potential threats in our city. Education also plays a vital and a crucial role in combating violence and fostering empathy. We must educate our youth about the importance of tolerance, understanding, and conflict resolution before they begin. By nurturing compassionate and responsible individuals, we can create a safer and more compassionate society. Lastly, it is essential to address the root causes of violence, mental health, by investing in mental health services, providing support for those who need. We can prevent potential harms and offer help to those struggling with their inner demons. In conclusion, the importance of public safety cannot be overstated. Random attacks on innocent people are not just isolated incidents in our city, they are a threat to every essence of humanity. Let us stand united against violence and work together to build a world where every individual can live without a fear. Together, we can create a safer, more compassionate, and harmonious society for ourselves and generations to come in our city. Thank you for giving me the time to speak.
Thank you so much. Is anybody else? Go ahead.
Good evening. My name's Dave Marr. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening, and thank you, all of you, for all the hard, just coming over, okay, all the hard work you do, day in and day out. But there is a perception of some people who live in the city that the police department isn't doing enough to investigate and arrest drug dealers. Now, I'm on the fence in this matter, but I have done a little research, and I looked online. I can only find evidence of one drug bust in Burlington in the last year, and that was a few months ago on North Avenue in the trailer park. There's also one in Manhattan Pizza, where the guy who got shot, I guess he ditched a bag of crack cocaine and got arrested for that on the way to the hospital. But that's, I guess, a different matter. But I think you'll all agree that drugs are the root cause, or at least a factor, in many of the crimes we have in the city: assaults, robberies, and homicides. And I believe there are also a number of residences in town that are known to harbor drug dealers. So I'd like to know if drug arrests just aren't being publicized, or if not enough is being done to arrest drug dealers. Because I think if there's not enough being done, it should be raised in terms of the priority. Because the last thing we want is for Burlington to be a safe haven for drug dealers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't know if, Keaton, anybody is online? Anybody who wants to speak in the public forum is online? Is there any way for you to check that? Doesn't look like it, right? Am I? If not, we can move to the chief's report if there's nobody online. Chief Murad, welcome.
Thank you so much. And I hope that it was sent to you. Are you able to pull that up, the chief's report? No, so generally we pull it up and then do a screen share. And you know, I would not want to be in your shoes.
Excuse me, Chief Murad, I am supporting Keaton.
Oh.
This is Catherine
Oh,
Schott.
hi. Sorry, Catherine.
I'm here from home tonight. I'm supporting Keaton, and I can make that happen. You
Awesome.
can start talking, and just give me 1 second. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I wouldn't want to be thrown in the deep end like this either. Yep. Gotcha. No, not at all. Not at all. I also sent it late. It was supposed to, I only sent it this morning. Wonderful. Thank you, Catherine. Yeah, I only was able to send this morning. I apologize for that. Normally, I send this on the Thursday or Friday prior. I was out of town. I was on a vacation. I had both my parents and my parents-in-law had 55th wedding anniversaries this summer, and I ended up having to go on 2 vacations, and that was a little too much. But nevertheless, it was nice to be away, but I was unable to get this in time, and I apologize for that. So we can go through this together now. That's a nice picture of the 4th of July, or the 3rd of July, rather, as we do it here. Thanks, Catherine. The 3rd of July is a big event for us. So it is an all-hands-on-deck sort of event. You can see all hands in that lower corner on the bottom there. That is as full a roll call as we currently can do. And so that was basically every officer that we had. We cover the Oakledge Park, we cover the waterfront, we cover North Beach, and then we move officers away from those posts to traffic posts after the fireworks are done in order to facilitate movement. And we had a couple adventures. For example, the folks who did the really cool drone show had not informed us that we had to have I believe a 150 or 200 foot alley under which no people were sitting. And so we had to move a bunch of people who had already established themselves for quite some time, hours in some cases, on a little peninsula down near the treatment plant that is south of Perkins Pier. Had to sort of emergency move those folks and say, we promise you can go back to your spaces. We obviously had traffic incidents, of course, and kids separated from parents who come and look for officers. But all in all, it was a terrific event. It's a really great night for the city, and even the officers there were able to enjoy themselves. Next, please. So this is a much less enjoyable fact. We experienced our first murder of 2023 on the beginning of July. People reported that a unresponsive female was seen in Champlain Street Park, which is just a little bit south and west of us here in City Hall. Officers responded and discovered that woman to be deceased. We treated it initially as what we call a suspicious untimely. The cause of death was not immediately certain and has still not yet been officially determined by the medical examiner, but we are confident that it was a murder in order for a number of reasons that are spelled out in the affidavit, which is publicly available. A press conference was held last week to that effect. Detectives did yet again exemplary work. Our detectives have solved every single murder that has happened in the city in the past more than 11 years, since 2012, since we started keeping records in Valcor. And the fact of the matter is, I don't believe that there's an unsolved murder for the past 3 decades. I think we have to go back to the 80s to find one. The officers and detectives did really terrific work and identified a suspect, arrested that suspect, and hopefully have been able to find some degree of resolution for the family of our victim, Kelly Cusson, and terrible crime. We still have a long way to go, obviously. An arrest is only the beginning, and now those detectives continue to work hard on further developing this case, working with the state's attorney's office, and ultimately taking this to trial, but it will be some time. We have associated that suspect, Claude Mumbert, with another crime. We released that information yesterday. There was a pretty vicious attack, a random attack of a woman about a year ago with a snowshoe. A person basically followed her around the downtown and then assaulted her with a discarded snowshoe and the iron cleats on that, or the metal cleats on that. We have associated the suspect in this murder with that crime as well. Next, please. Our head count, this is as of July 1st. We peg each of these to the first of the month, that's 64. Since July 1st, we have lost 2 officers to retirement, but we brought 5 aboard. And so we're doing a little better if we were to show this today. And I'm hopeful that the chart that we show you in the August Chiefs Report will be a little bit more positive than this one. But 64 is where we've been for a while. You can see those dots have sort of been the same the last couple months. Next, please. This is another breakdown of those numbers. This is as of the 15th of the month. Again, that previous chart shows the first of each month. This is as of the 15th. It was the same at that point. Neither of the 2 officers who retired had officially retired as of the 15th. One went on the 27th and the 17th, and one went on the 21st. Nor had we brought aboard the 5 officers that we just brought on for the next police academy, which begins in August. They're currently doing pre-basic work at the police department. But so this is the middle of the month, July 15th. That's the cutoff we use for all the data in the chief reports. It was 64 with 57 available. And this shows the breakdown of where those officers are. Detectives, the airport, unavailable includes, we have 4 officers who graduated from the police academy in June. They are still on field training. We do not consider them to be available officers because they have to be with another officer at all times, et cetera. Next, please. Thank you. Public safety roles unique to the Burlington Police Department. We have 6 CSOs and 5 CSLs. Unfortunately, both those numbers are lower today on July 25th than they were on July 15th because one of those CSOs is among our 5 new police recruits, and one of those CSLs is among our 5 new police recruits. I think that's a great thing. I think it's great that we are able to bring people on board, put them in roles within the department, allow them to see the culture of the department, see the city, understand the role of the department and its various positions, including police officer, and still say, yes, I want to join this police department, and I want to stay here as part of this team and part of this family. I think that speaks highly of the agency and the culture that we've got inside. I think it's great that we have a CSL who is transitioning to the police role. I think that too speaks highly of what we have with regard to police officers who have a social service and a social work mindset. Next, please. Our priority response plan, revised in May of 2021, introduced in May of 2021, revised in May of 2022. This is still the system that controls how we use the resources we've got, whether we're talking about those half dozen CSOs, whether we're talking about the 60-some police officers, et cetera. Next, please. Thank you. Year-to-date incident volume. Our incident volume is barely lower than it was 5 years ago. We have all but caught up to where we were in 2018. And that is challenging when we are down on officers. We have 50% fewer patrol resources, and they are addressing a mere 3% fewer incidents. So something has to give there. What gives is the priority response plan and the use of stacking calls. We stack about 12% of calls so far this year, and we also divert a lot of calls to online reporting, about 13%. And that's 25%. But again, we're 50% lower with regard to patrol resources. The use of other roles like CSOs and CSLs also helps address that gap, but it's pretty pronounced, and we are definitely looking at a challenging picture with regard to priority 1 calls for service as well, although I unfortunately don't have the graphic for that in this month's Chiefs report. Next slide, please. This is a much larger table. You can see those overdose numbers. Horrifically, I believe that we have now surpassed last year's annual total. So here we are just a few weeks into the second half of the year, but we have already surpassed the entirety of what 2022 was, and 2022 was a really horrible year for overdose compared to where we had been in previous years. We're increasingly seeing that some of these overdoses are not overdoses. They're welfare checks for people who have not technically overdosed but have used substances. But nevertheless, the number would still be completely out of keeping with last year's numbers, and it's pretty terrific, and not terrific in a good way, pretty horrific. Some of those other categories you see are still higher, but others are moving in the right direction. Aggravated assault, thankfully, is a good deal lower. Gunfire is a great deal lower than it was last year or the year prior, and that's a very good thing. It contributes to those aggravated assault numbers as well. Simple assault's up a little bit, but we are forging forward. Traffic is a little bit up. That has to do in part with the fact that we have 4 new officers on field training. Really, the only people who do traffic these days are newer officers, just to learn the mechanism of it, and then they move away from it. Despite what was mentioned in some of the public comment, there is not a racial disparity in Burlington's traffic stops last year, this year, and thus far this year. We're not seeing that happen either. But the last 2 years, that disparity has been eliminated from the perspective of the population of drivers measured by crash data. My monthly plug, you'll see that the starting pay went up, and that's because we're in the second year of this contract now, and so that starting pay is a good deal higher. As I mentioned, I was on vacation. I was in Gatlinburg on a day that happened to also be there was some convention of police cadets from a number of different agencies around the country that were all there. Cadets are younger people, generally in high school, who larger police departments are able to field cadet programs where they bring people in and sort of teach them police drill, and they get to be familiarized with certain kinds of police activities. And so these young people were marching and doing cadence throughout Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and I mortified my poor son by, when they stopped and were quiet, I shouted out to them that I was the chief of police here in Burlington, and we were offering $74,000 to start, and we would love to have eager young folks join us. My son wouldn't talk to me for the rest of the day, but maybe we got one or two of those young cadets from Nassau County in New York State to be interested in thinking about Burlington as a possibility. And that is the presentation for the Chief's report.
May I ask a question? I may have asked this before. I just had a question about the Valcor statistics. It's my recollection.
And thank you, Catherine.
It's my recollection that there's like a primary reason for the call and then a secondary reason for the call. And so on your statistics, is that all like primary reasons?
That is all primary. The secondary call category is very rarely used. It's just not something that officers do by habit or by practice. And as a result, it's not one that we can really rely on. It is officers generally, nobody really understands the protocol for the use of the secondary. And so is it renaming the incident so that the primary is what it was initially, but the secondary is what it became? Is it the opposite? Is it saying that this was a welfare check call, but then it turned into a domestic violence call, and I'm going to put both of those in there? It's unclear, and as a result, we stick with the primary category. The primary category, as it says on that page, can be changed. It can be changed by the first responding officer who may tell dispatch, hey, this is not an overdose, this is a welfare check, or this is an agency assist, or it's a suicide. It's a potential suicide, but not an overdose, for example. It can be changed by detectives, right? So an example would be the case with our murder. That was an untimely. Untimely is the term that we use for all deaths, whether a person is 103, which, God bless somebody who makes it to 103, but that passing is not an untimely passing per se. But we nevertheless call every single passing untimely. This was an untimely, and we investigated it as a suspicious untimely, which isn't a different category. It's just untimely. We changed it to a homicide when additional information came in during that investigation, but that took time to develop. And so now that's carried in that way, right? So if I ran my untimely numbers, they would be one higher the day before that distinction was made and then one lower the day after. Similarly, homicide, we carry, an attempted murder would be carried as a homicide. So certain felonious assaults are carried as homicides, but they're not because the person survived, but the attempt. And that is where you can get into a little bit of sort of the slurry of data.
Thank you.
Commissioner Oski?
Hi, thank you. I'm wondering if you can talk to us about how often or why you might evaluate the priority response plan. And specifically, I look and I see that there are 66 crashes, and I know that you've told us in the past that there's not a lot of enforcement right now of traffic violations. So when you see this number as 66, do you go back and look at your priority response plan and say, and definitely with overdoses too, and there's no drug enforcement, are you sitting around and talking about that and deciding, maybe we should adjust our priority response plan and make some changes? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, thanks for the chance to do that. So the priority response plan is, both overdoses are priority ones, so we go to those. Crashes, the chart there shows, I'm getting a little feedback. The chart there shows crashes with injury or crashes with fatality only. So it doesn't show other kinds of crashes, property or leaving the scene of an accident crashes. The fact that it's 66 and that it's higher than previous years does concern me a little bit. Traffic, however, is not a priority one because traffic is always going to be something that is discretionary to officers. Officers see it and take action on it when they have time to do so. We certainly expect officers to take action if they witness egregious driving behaviors. Somebody doing 70 miles an hour down North Avenue, that is still something that an officer is going to attempt to interdict. What we don't look for anymore is, turning signal violations. We don't look for pretextual stops in order to try for drug interdiction. I don't believe that that's a valuable way of getting at the drug problem. That said, again, any egregious driving behavior that has a safety component should be, and I believe is being addressed by officers. I think as a city, we have come to the realization that driving with regard to crashes and with regard to fatal crashes with injury and fatal crashes, is best mitigated and changed by engineering design. That is what the city has sort of leaned towards over the past several years. The use of speed tables, for example, that you do see on North Avenue there, the use of different kinds of lighting systems or bump outs on curbs. Do I think that we have reached a point where our diminished traffic enforcement is now causing crashes to nudge up? It would appear to be so. That said, I still don't know that there is an appetite in the community for us to resume a posture of more vigorous traffic enforcement. I think there are parts of the community that are quite, expecting of that. But I don't know that that's where we want to go as an agency. So we do talk about it a little bit, but not in that sense. Now, with regard to other evaluations, part of the issue with the priority response plan is that we have now, we now use this as data, and we have been using it as data for the past 3 years since we implemented a version of this during the pandemic. And so, if I were to move one category out, it's going to have data implications for comparison from year to year. If we, for example, said overdoses are no longer a priority one for the police department, they are a medical call, we should not be going to them, it should be a fire department response, that would change, right? Especially this year when we've had as many as we've had. There would be a statistically significant change to our priority one call volume data. Now, I'm not making determinations that have to do with people's safety based on whether or not our data is going to be skewed next year. That's not my priority. But it's a component of decision making, especially once you've sort of established something that you're using. I think that for us, drugs also, like traffic, are going to remain priority threes, not because we think of them as unimportant, but because when we have limited resources, that's what the priority response plan is. It is when there's limited resources, what are we going to do or not going to do? And, responding to a call for a person using drugs in the alley here at City Hall Park, which happened to me today. I'd been here for City Hall for a meeting. I was about to pull out from the space that is a police-marked space at the corner of Church and Main, and a person came up to me and said, "What do we do if we see somebody using drugs?" And I said, "It can be reported, but it may not get a response. Is the person doing that right now? Is there a safety issue that you need me to come respond?" And she said, "No, but what do we do?" We do want that reported. We want to know what's happening in the city from a data perspective, if nothing else. But are we going to turn that into something that we go to? No. The route to addressing drug use is to have presence in our public spaces, which we have had a greater amount of. Even over the last couple of weeks, we've changed some of our patrol postures to focus on the downtown core. But more importantly, it's to do a little bit of what we do. I'm gesturing to one of the persons who made public comment. We don't make press releases about every single one of those, but we have had far more than just that one drug interdiction and operation in the North Avenue Co-op. We've had quite a few over the past several years, and what we consider those to be is effective means of addressing, frankly, neighborhood quality of life. I don't believe that any of these are actually effective at addressing the totality of the drug situation. There are too many drugs out there. And even when we make an arrest that has a significant recovery amount, where a lot of contraband is recovered, it's not making a dent in the amount of drugs that are out there or being used. What it is doing, and it is a useful and valid use of police resources, is addressing what has become a locus of disorder and problem for a given neighborhood if a drug house exists. That certainly was the case in the North Avenue Cooperative. They're still experiencing problems, but we do what we can do with regard to interrupting the sale. Those operations don't follow the priority response plan. What the detectives are doing or the drug detectives are doing has nothing to do with the priority response plan. That is merely for how we marshal and husband resources available to us on patrol. And so I don't see changing, for example, a drug call to being a higher priority, because if I only have 3 officers available, and by sending 1 officer to a call that's going to put us into a place where we're now in the priority response, that 1 call is not going to be like, I think somebody's selling drugs. That's a call for our detectives so that they can begin to work on that in a way that will have the potential of actually having a prosecutorial outcome. A street-level drug arrest in Vermont does not have a prosecutorial outcome.
Thank you.
Commissioner Oski. Oh, so Commissioner Cox? Yeah.
Hi, I just had one more quick one. I was wondering when the BTV Cares positions were going to, like when that program was going to get up and
Yeah,
running.
thanks for asking. They were approved last night by the City Council. The City Council approved the job descriptions after thankful input from all of you. That input was incorporated. The memo describing the program and sort of its current concept and the job descriptions were approved. I met with the mayor this afternoon. He said, get on that. He wants them posted hopefully by the end of the week. I'm hopeful that we will be able to meet that. That's just the clinician parts, so the clinical supervisor and the 2 clinicians, and then we need to work with the university in order to identify some registered nurses to fill out the medical component of the team. It's possible that initially we're going to go for 1 clinician and 1 RN and have a limited number of hours just as we get our feet under us. It's also possible that we'll go for both clinicians and both RNs. That part is a little bit up in the air. But posting the positions is going to happen, I'm hopeful, by the end of the week, certainly very, very early in next week, and then we will see what we get with regard to applications. Both Lacey Smith, who is our community support supervisor, and Jackie Corbally, who was the opioid prevention coordinator for the city and now is in practice, but she is consulting with us and doing some part-time work in order to get this program down. Both Jackie and Lacey believe that we're going to have a lot of applicants for these positions. I think the salary is strong. I think that the stability and regularity of a city job is appealing to folks, especially those who've otherwise worked in the NGO field. And I think that we will have some strong candidates, and hopefully we'll have a surfeit of excellent candidates to wade through.
Thank you. That's really good news.
Any other commissioners have any questions for the chief? None? Thank you.
Thank you.
Rod, thank you so much. So we get to our next agenda item, which is 6.1, use of force body cam review by the commission. And, oh, sorry, did I miss the commendation? I'm sorry, I stand corrected. There is 5 officer commendation, and Commissioner Cox is going to read it.
So I just have one.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, this is written similar to last month's, where it's kind of a big, long explanation, but I like everything to go in the officer's file if possible. So on Friday, July 7th, 2023, an unresponsive woman, later identified as Kelly Kusan, was discovered in a secluded portion of South Champlain Street Park. The Burlington Police and Fire Departments responded and determined that she was deceased. The BPD's ID unit responded to collect evidence, and the decedent was removed to the medical examiner's office. The case was preliminarily assigned to the BPD's Detective Bureau. As of July 12th, toxicology results and a determination of cause of death were still pending. On July 17th, just 10 days after the initial report, a suspect was arrested, charged, and arraigned for the second-degree aggravated murder of Ms. Kusan. In those 10 days, the police department as a whole and its Detective Services Bureau, headed by Acting Lieutenant Mike Bellevue, jumped into action. It was an all-hands effort. Detective Corporal Crystal Wynn, assigned to the DSB, was the lead detective. The team included General Detectives Eric let's see, I've written this down. Cradaville, thank you. Erica Schaller and Nikki Moyer. Also on the team were drug detectives diverted from their normal assignments for the duration, Derwin Ellerman and Patrick Hartnett. According to Acting Lieutenant Bellevue at a press conference on July 18th, the team of detectives discovered evidence including the suspect's fingerprints, a shoe sole later determined to belong to one of the suspect's shoes, and video evidence showing the suspect walking with Ms. Kusan. The work of the team is ongoing. We cannot prevent all crime in our neighborhoods. When a crime like this occurs, we look to the police department to do their very best to find and apprehend the perpetrator. Here, the entire police department contributed to identify and arrest the suspect. The work of the DSB was particularly noteworthy. We know that these detectives still have a lot of hard work ahead of them, and we expect they will do just as well. The exemplary work of the Burlington Police Department, the Detective Services Bureau, and the team assigned to this case are in keeping with the highest standards of good police and detective work. You done good.
Thank you, Commissioner Cox. Just for the future, this month we did not receive any commendations from the BPD chief. In the future, if you can sort of make sure that it's forwarded to me or Commissioner Cox, we would like to read them. I think there's been a staff change, so we're trying to figure the process out. So thank you very much. Okay, having said that, we can now move to commission business. 6.1, use of force body cam review by the commission. Commissioner Cox has a PowerPoint slide, which hopefully maybe Catherine or Keaton, if you can have that up on the screen, that would be great for the public. We do have copies for ourselves, commissioners, on your email to look at, so. See if we can pull that up on the screen. Yes. So Commissioner Cox, you may want to speak to that.
So if you could move to slide 3, that's for the topic that we're on now. Okay, very good, thank you. So I put these together because I was really trying to understand how all of the authorities work in the city. I practiced law for 17 years, but it was, maritime law, so I don't know anything about municipal law. And so I'm just trying to understand how the different layers work together. And so beginning on the upper left corner, the city charter is the governing document really for the whole city, and then everything flows from there. And the city charter provides that that the city council shall make rules and regulations for government of the entire police force, and that the Burlington Police Commission has the authority and responsibility relating to the management of the Burlington Police Department as delegated by resolution of the city council. So we don't have any authority other than what's delegated to us by the city council. There is a couple other very specific provisions that we have authority to do this or that with respect to the police, and I guess there's animal control and a couple things, but mostly we look to the city council to give us authority to do what we're going to do. The city council has passed a number of resolutions giving powers and authorities and responsibilities to the Burlington Police Commission, and among those is Regulation 7.09, where they said the Burlington, so this is the City Council resolved that the Burlington Police Commission is empowered to initiate audits, reviews, and evaluations of policies, directives, or data in regard to discipline, racial disparities, or other commission priorities. And so that's our City Council resolution level. And then from there, there may be a Burlington Police Commission policy, and at the policy level, there is no policy regarding the commission review of body-worn camera footage. There is a policy regarding publication to the public of carefully redacted body cam footage. And there is a department directive, DD 14.1, which was approved in 2018, also about the use of body-worn camera footage and the release to the public and so on. But each month, for a while, we've been reviewing the body-worn camera videos that relate to use of force incidents. And that was just something that was being done when I joined, and the people that I talked to said that it was being done when they joined for the most part. And so it's been going on for some time. And there's an issue now that's just recently come to our attention that the Burlington Police Officers Association contract, BPOA contract, provides that, so this is on the next slide. The BPOA contract provides that body-worn camera recordings shall not be audited to monitor officer or personnel performance without cause. And so they've objected to our monthly viewing of the use of force videos. And so the question is there a conflict? And so that's why I have a question mark above the conflict sign, because it may or may not be a conflict. And I think that our lawyer thinks that there's not a conflict, the commission lawyer, but other lawyers disagree. And so I think probably out of an abundance of caution, we refrain from looking at the body-worn camera footage this month. We don't want to, we didn't want to do an act that would cause litigation directly. And then we've decided to put it on pause. And then what we'd like to do.
Commissioner Seguino.
I think it's a commission decision as to whether to put it on pause or not. Many issues are resolved through litigation. So when there is a difference of opinion, one does not retreat, one moves forward, and one resolves it legally. So I would very much disagree with what you're proposing, and I do think it's a commission decision, not one of the co-chairs.
Yes, if I may offer just a point of clarification or of information. I think that what happened was a move from looking at specific body camera when the use of force policy, when the use of force reports were published each month, saying this one is interested, this one or this one or this one, to a blanket, we just want all of them, and we're going to divvy all of them up. And I believe that is what changed and why the BPOA issued what it said. But that is a difference than, you mentioned that this had been happening for some time. The routine viewing of body camera only began well after the pandemic, because we couldn't meet in person anymore. And prior to that, it was really only very specific incidents that would cause a review of any kind. And that review would be done together in executive session of the police commission at One North Avenue. And we would go through it as a group and be able to sort of say to pause at any given moment or ask for clarifications. Sometimes it would be viewed in whole, and then we'd go back and view it in step all together. It was a very collaborative, very sort of group endeavor. That was no longer possible owing to the pandemic and to the change in how the meetings were being conducted. To facilitate the ability for the commission to view these, we gave the commission Axon accounts. And then we also began to publish narratives of each and every single use of force. And initially, the viewing was only specific uses of force that amounted to, in the BPOA's opinion, and I am here sort of explaining their position, which is not mine, but is theirs. Their position was that was not random. That was driven by specifics. Now to say all of them is random.
Commissioner Sabino.
So the reason we started reviewing all of them was because it had been represented to the mayor and others in the public that we approved all use of force incidents based on the very small narrative that we got, that we've seen in some cases did not conform to the video. So the decision was made that if we are going to be perceived as having, if you will, condoned these uses of force incidents, that we should be looking at the videos associated with them as well. So there has been an evolution in a variety of ways forward. And again, I would reiterate that if this is to be litigated, so be it. We have our own legal counsel, which has advised us, which is independent of the city's attorneys who have a conflict of interest. That's the reason we have conflict counsel. And so I would propose that we continue to do this, and that if it results in litigation, to clarify this, as many things are in our world today, that's what we should do. But to back off from our oversight role is, in my view, is inappropriate and is not what the community wants. Thanks.
Could I just respond? I was just trying to lay the groundwork of what the situation is now. I was not recommending any particular course of action. I was just explaining what's been done up until this minute. And I certainly would like to see if we can come to some consensus agreement on how to move forward. So, thank you.
And just to respond, I understood you as saying that we should hold off, but if you weren't reflecting that as a decision of the commission, I appreciate that and happy for us to all discuss that ourselves.
So from a procedural perspective, I'm sorry, Haley, I cannot say your last name, just like my first name, so I'm very sensitive to that. If you can, if you can say it for me so I don't.
It's McClanahan, and it's okay. You are not the first, you will not be the last.
But I'm very sensitive, as you know, with the first name like Shakuntala. So, McClanahan, I know you want to say a few words.
I mean, I think that sort of where we are in the process at this point is to get an understanding, perhaps, of what the commission's desire is to do as it relates to use of force policies. As it relates to this particular issue, I would defer to Acting City Attorney Sturdivant. As I've assessed this situation, I don't believe there is a conflict of interest for our office to provide general legal advice and opinions to the commission as we move through this process. But generally what I would suggest as a course of action is to get an understanding of what the commission is seeking to do as it relates to body-worn camera use of force. For our office to provide an assessment of that proposed path as it relates to both the commission's charge under the various authorities that Chair Cox has kindly summarized for all of us this evening, and then to also reconcile that with the city's obligations under the collective bargaining agreement with the police union. And from there, we can advise a path forward and try to liaise between the commission's desires and also our obligations under the contract. So I think we're at a very preliminary place as we sort of move forward with establishing what the process will be moving forward. I received some really interesting questions from Chair Cox as well today that I'm trying to get to the bottom of as it relates to the last square on her PowerPoint, I think on the first slide, as to sort of how that policy that regulates the commission's role in reviewing complaints, how that sort of originated. It's very clear that it was clarified in 2020 pursuant to a resolution of the city council, but actually back in as early as what I can find in 2017, 2018, it looks like there were initial sort of rumblings of the policy within committee, within council committee. So really just trying to get a good understanding of how that policy started so we can get a better understanding of how to move it along. But in summary, I would say we're very I would say we're at the beginning of this discussion, and I think really the first step is to get an understanding of how the commission wants to be able to review what the process has been, what the commission's desire is, and if we can find a path forward that will meet that while also complying and respecting the agreement that we have with the police union.
Thank you so much. Do any of the commissioners, Commissioner Seguino?
Just one other thing. In August of 2021, with the input of the then city attorney, the commission passed a body-worn camera footage release policy, and I'll just read the first line for you. The Burlington Police Department will proactively release to the public primary or representative body-worn camera footage within 30 days of an incident unless a criminal inquiry would prevent release related blah, blah, blah. So my point being is that there's already a policy for these body-worn camera videos to be made public anyhow. Didn't see it, sorry, can't see that far away. Just pointing that out, thanks.
Point of additional clarification, it's very specific uses of force that are in that policy, not all. And that too is a function of what is only something that's happened in the last 3 or 4 sessions of going to every single use of force and requesting body camera for it. The policy as written with regard to public release involves only instances in which there is injury, the use of a tool, or if it occasions significant public concern.
Do any of the commissioners want to weigh in on what?
Yeah. So if I understand correctly, it does not impact complaints. If there is a specific complaint, we request Axon. There's no barrier.
That's absolutely correct. A complaint is by definition not a random audit.
Okay. And if we were to review the use of force reports and identify specific videos and give some reason for wishing to access that video, that seems to be in compliance.
Yes, with the caveat, I would say, a reason that's sort of rationally related to a concern that perhaps the use of force did not comply with the city's use of force policy. But yes, generally, yes.
Commissioner Cox?
So I just think part of the problem is that it's really difficult to know what occurred from just reading the summary. And so that's why I felt like that there was a utility in being able to watch the videos. If in the summary it said, we probably hit him harder than we should have, and then we'd want to see the video, but it doesn't ever say that, and so it's a little bit tricky, I would say. And I'm not just rolling over on this. It's my understanding that these body cam videos are kept. We can look at them next month instead of this month. But my preference, after being a litigator for 17 years and knowing what it's like to litigate things, my preference is to work it out if we can. And so I'm of a position that I'd prefer to have discussion between our attorney and the city attorney, see if some common ground can be found, see if a path can be found going forward.
And just to make very clear, our office does not represent the police union. They have their own representation in council and are raising this independently. So our role is really to represent the city and its interests, make sure that, to represent the commission and its charge and oversight, while also making sure that the city is complying with its obligations under the contract.
Thank you.
Do other commissioners have any thought on this, or should we take that to be the directive, is that our attorney will be in touch, the commission's attorney will be in touch with the city attorney on this matter? Commissioner Seguino?
Was looking, no. I think that makes sense, but however, in the interim, I think we need to continue to review videos. And that conversation can be ongoing at the same time.
Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we request that conflict counsel consult with the city attorney with regard to the BPOA grievance, and that in the interim, we continue reviewing videos as we have until this matter is resolved, or in some way we've been given information that we shouldn't be reviewing those videos.
So I have a question about process of the commission. It felt like that there was two different ideas, and one of which I felt in favor of, and one of which I may not feel in favor of, and so I was wondering if we could split those into two separate motions.
I'd like to do it as one motion. If you want to make a friendly amendment, it's up to me to accept the amendment or not. There also needs to be a second to my motion. And if my motion fails, you can make a motion yourself. That would be a
Okay.
process that's typically
Okay.
followed.
Very good, thank you.
So we can vote on the motion that Commissioner Seguino just proposed. All in favor, say aye.
I think you need I'm sorry to interrupt. I think you need a second.
Oh,
to have a
yes, of
motion
course,
on the
I do
floor.
need, thank you so much.
And you can also make a motion once it's been seconded during debate to divide the question. That's also an option.
Okay. Any
I'll second
commissioners?
Commissioner Seguino's motion.
Okay. We have a second. Is there a motion to divide the two issues? Okay, there is a motion to divide the two.
I moved to divide the issues.
So we have two, help me out here, people.
It's typically a friendly, the
Friendly
typical
from-
strategy is a friendly amendment. So if you want to offer that,
Well, my amendment is really just wanting to divide the issues. So one issue being that the attorneys will talk together, and the other issue being that we'll continue watching body footage while.
can you
they
state a
work on it.
reason for dividing the motion?
Because I feel like I'm in favor of the attorneys talking to anybody, and I'm not in favor of continuing to watch the videos, because I feel like that leads us dangerously down a path that I don't think is important enough to do, given the fact that our attorney will be back in early August, and they'll be able to have a conversation. And we could have a special meeting thereafter. We have a lot of ways of tackling this, but I would prefer not to engage in conduct that might cause litigation when it may just be a couple weeks from now that everything's sorted out.
Commissioner Oski.
Would you object to, well, I don't know yet if Commissioner Seguino is agreeable to dividing the question, but we have, it sounded like from what the chief said, I don't know what the exact language is, but that we do have the authority to review body cam video when there's been an injury, or there were two other, I don't know what they are, but there were two other, that we should at least retain that authority to view those videos in the interim while the lawyers are working it out.
I think that's mixing issues. There's one policy on release, public release of body cam worn footage, and a separate issue is the commission's review. So I think that's merging the two and muddying the waters somewhat. There's a use of force report. If, as I understand correctly, if based on that report, if you can articulate a reason why within the remit of the commission, we wish to have that released to us and we review it, then there's a reason for that request. The release of body-worn camera footage publicly is a separate issue. So again, if I understand correctly, anything related to a complaint, we have access to review those videos. And we've thus far have had unfettered access to those, and I think very good news that it will continue to go forward. It's core to our mandate and absolutely indispensable to our work.
And I think it requires, just to tack on to that, what you were saying, I think if I am correct, it requires us to actually make a request, a special request for those. So it's not automatically that we all get, so we have to all agree that we want to see these body cams, and the chairs actually approach BPD for those. So moving forward, do we have a friendly amendment to separate the two?
I want to, first of all, I want to thank Commissioner Cox, and I appreciate your effort, and I am typically a person for compromise, but perhaps I can explain a bit more. I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that this letter from the BPOA can have the impact of stopping our work based on an assumption of the appropriateness of it. And in many cases, when there is, a concern about a particular behavior in an organization, the organization doesn't just stop doing it. Harvard did not stop affirmative action admissions, for example, when they were sued. It is resolved in the courts, but I think that it's important that we continue our work, and and I am not meaning to cast any aspersion on the BPOA, but that any concern about the activities that we conduct means that we stop until the lawyers get involved. Yes, let's have the lawyers talk, but in the interim, we should continue the rhythm of our work. And so for that reason, sorry, but I'm going to just reject the friendly amendment.
Okay, so we just have one motion on the floor, that is Commissioner Seguino's. I don't have the exact wording in front of me, but Keaton, did you write that down? And can you sort of read it out one more time for everybody before we vote? Or people sort of have an idea? Should we go ahead and vote? I was just going to ask.
For the minutes.
Okay, okay. Can you repeat it one more
I
time?
paraphrase, but you have the record, sorry, you have the recording for the first time.
Okay.
So the motion is to request that conflict counsel consult with the city attorneys regarding the BPO grievance, and in the interim, until that is resolved, the commission continues to request body cam videos related to the use of force reports. That was better than the first time.
We're ready
around.
to vote?
Use the
All
second.
in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay. The motion fails. Is there another motion, perhaps, that Commissioner Cox wants to introduce?
So I would move that we would ask our attorneys to confer, the city attorney with the council's retained attorney, that they confer. And in the interim, that we not stop, but that we pause watching videos until we get some sort of path going forward worked out. If we can't get a path worked out going forward. Oh,
If I
that was
may,
commentary at the end of my motion.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm
Commissioner, sorry,
familiar
recognize.
with Robert's rules, but I think if there is a video that we have a reason to see, we should request it. Full stop. We don't need to stop or pause. We can continue with our work. Just give a reason for the video. The lawyers can continue to discuss, but if there's something we want to see, particularly related to a complaint or otherwise, we make the request.
I don't think those are at issue.
What I wrote down for myself is that I believe that I want to adhere to the directive given by the city attorney's office and comply with all City of Burlington BPOA contractual elements as they pertain to body-worn camera. I want to respect that and get more clarification and then move forward. Thank you. Any other commissioners? Okay.
So do I accept Jack's friendly amendment? Is that how that's done?
Oh, yes, it is a friendly amendment, correct. Yes, it is.
Sorry, Commissioner Keefe's friendly
Commissioner,
amendment.
Keys, yes.
Thank you. I think that was a
And I
good
think
amendment.
we can vote on it now. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any nays? Yep, all right. Thank you, Commissioner Cox, for your presentation and PowerPoint. The next is the discussion of the issues raised by members of the commission in the presentation to the Joint Committee of Charter Change. And each of you received, Commissioner Cox, I want you to speak to it, but I was just going to bring up a few points. Each commissioner received a long analysis and thoughts, and mostly questions that you had posed for us and for Chief Murad. We don't expect to discuss and for you to answer, and for us to answer all the 92 questions there tonight. That's something we have been discussing and thinking about. But I think there are some points that I wanted to raise with the commission and get some feedback before we get to the next meeting of the joint committee. The number one question that I think I want to ask the commissioner is your thoughts on the actual charter change. And my own, and this is, I'm speaking for myself, not for the commission, my own position is that the charter change, there's no required charter change. I think the language is relatively clear. What I am looking for is perhaps an ordinance change where the city council, through resolution or changes in ordinance, codify some of what we already are doing. So I think that's where my position is. However, I can be influenced one way or the other. That's number one. Number two is I was hoping that we at least briefly touch upon the complaint process. And again, that would require certain codification. Again, we're doing a lot of the work already, but I think it still requires a little bit more clarity. I think those are the two general comments I had. And if anybody else has any other thoughts, thank you, Commissioner Seguino, for putting that document together and helping us guide the process. Okay, we can ask Commissioner Seguino, why don't you?
So I'm just going to speak briefly to the issue of charter change and the ordinance. Those documents cannot be too specific. So they have to be more general. So in terms of detailing the complaint process, for example, something we've been talking about for a long time, it's not something that would go in a city ordinance. So I think the recommendations have to be broader with regard to what we are given the authority to do on the commission. In that document, this came from all of the commissioners, including recent past commissioners, based on the experience of doing this work for the last several years. And there are a variety of things in there, but I think I'm just going to take the moment to emphasize what I think is critical to me in terms of our work. A lot of the controversy around civilian oversight has involved the role of the chief in making final decisions with regard to discipline. And I'm just going to be put out there without too much preparation, but I think I can do this from having thought about it a lot. I've had numerous discussions with members of NACOL and others in civilian oversight, and the argument that I've been most convinced by is that the ultimate decision with regard to discipline should remain with the chief. That said, there is a role for the community input and community values into policing. Community values have changed, and I think those of us who've been on the commission for a while know that we've, at least, I don't know if the chief believes this, but I think we believe that we have offered some important perspective on the issues. So there is a fundamental role, I believe, for the commission, and the community wants oversight. There's no doubt about that. 40% of the community voted for the failed ballot item with all of its flaws. So what I see as a way going forward that acknowledges the role of the chief in making the final decision with regard to discipline has to be balanced against the community's desire for civilian oversight and for input into the process. And so what I think is fundamental as a change is that complaints be made public, appropriately anonymized, as they are in Boulder, Colorado, and other places in the country. New Haven, Connecticut's civilian oversight body does this. That if the commission disagrees with the chief's disposition of a complaint, that the commission writes its findings that are made public, and that the chief's findings be made public as well. The community then can observe, in many cases, that's numerous complaints we get. I think it's important for the community to see what the complaints are. I think many of them are, in fact, not serious, but there are some that are. And leaving the chief with the final decision, but also explaining to the community the various perspectives on how we view this incident is a way to both to have the transparency that is needed, leaves the structure of determining discipline with the chief. And I want to attribute an additional idea to Commissioner Oski, which I found very compelling, and that is to enshrine in some way the philosophy that this commission has embodied in the last 3 years. We have made no decisions that have recommended punishment, if you will, or discipline of officers. We've recommended training, we've recommended policy changes, and our stance has always been, can we do better? Can the police department do better? And can we support the police department in doing better? And so having a process whereby, in response to complaints, that the department also acknowledges where it could do better would do tremendous amount for healing in this community and for promoting transparency. So I see that, for me, those are there were many items on that list. I see that as central, and I hope it's a middle way to addressing the concerns on all of the various sides of this. And the second is the request for a monitor. I've made my case to you all about that and to the Joint Committee. I think it's fundamentally important that we do that, and I won't rehearse those reasons now, but I'll leave those two issues out there.
Commissioner Keefe, Commissioner Oski, Commissioner Cox.
I would agree with what Commissioner Seguino stated. I do, however, feel that there was value in the proposal from Senator Dick Sears during the last legislative session that didn't make it to crossover, which was really establishing a quasi-judicial body to take final determination on discipline. But that would require resourcing, staffing, a budget. It would have to be a quasi-judicial body with due process, right of independent judicial review, and all of those things are not what the commission currently is. The commission is an advisory body, and it is made of civilian volunteers. So I think I'm still a little unclear exactly what the charter change committee is working on, because if we're working within the parameters of an advisory body, and again, I fully agree with what Commissioner Seguino stated, which is, providing some more transparency around some of these complaints in a way that doesn't compromise confidentiality, anonymized, summaries of what goes on, and bringing the community into a dialogue so that there is creating better partnerships between police and the community to improve public safety. I think we're all working in the same vein. So the question, I think, was, is there a need for a charter change? No, I don't see that. To what extent procedures of how complaints are handled and processed would be in an ordinance or not, I think that could be further discussed, the level of specificity. But I think the discussion should be centered around what work can an advisory body do that creates more transparency and accountability and creating stronger partnerships between police and the community. So I agree, and I feel like that should be the focus, and maybe we could spend less energy on debating a charter change and get on with the task at hand.
Commissioner Oski?
Thank you. I also agree with Commissioner Seguino. I do not believe that the commission should have a role in disciplining officers. I'm just going through the notes here. I think that an ordinance can be specific when it comes to the process of complaint resolution, and I think it would be helpful for the. There could be a policy that this commission adopts that's consistent with that provides more detail to the process, but the ordinance could certainly spell out in more detail how the complaint process is going to work. And it would be helpful for the city council to be clear in how they want the complaint process to work. It's generally the charter that is more broad and more sort of authority given, but the ordinance can be quite specific. When it comes to the timeline and the process of the complaint resolution, I think more specificity would be helpful. And I think that the chief's role in that process should be in writing throughout, could be verbal and in writing, but it needs to be, we need to have the clarity of things in writing. I don't think that the commission should be involved in officer discipline, and I think we should make that clear to the council. I think they're looking for some clarity from us on that. I think the combination of some more transparency in the complaint process with appropriate anonymity, as you recommended, Commissioner Seguino, makes sense, and it would allow for the community to have some provide feedback to the mayor and the chief who are responsible for running the department. Let me just go through a couple more things. I also would love to have it be formalized in the complaint process that the chief, with input from the department, looks at these complaints as an opportunity for growth and learning. And so what could have been done differently, or how could what did we learn from this without it being, because as Commissioner Seguino said, most of the time these complaints are not, they don't rise to the level of requiring discipline, but they are an indication to us and to the department that the public wasn't happy with the way things went down. And a lot of that is a communication issue, or lack of transparency, whether it's in dispatch or in training. There's lots of different reasons why things don't go down well, and there's always an opportunity to learn from that. And if that is the culture of the police department, where we're going to learn and get better all the time, I think that will go a long way to building more trust in the community. I don't think that officer grievances should be heard by the commission. I think it creates weird conflicts for us. I do think that the commission should be consulted on policy, but I do not think that the commission should be imposing policies on the department. There was a recommendation by Commissioner Seguino. I think that the commission should sit in on hiring and promotions. I'm not sure that I support that. I'm not sure I completely understand or have thought about that enough, but I'm not ready to go there. And those are my comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Cox?
I agree with Commissioner Seguino and Commissioner Keefe and Commissioner Oski, thank you. I was going to say Jessica. I think that there's so many great things in the presentation that was given to the Joint Commission. There are process challenges because, like, in trying to figure out the governing documents and how those fit together, in some cases they just simply don't fit together, or they weren't really well thought out to begin with. And so they're definitely, I think, could use some updating and change for the better, but I don't think a charter change is needed. I think that going as low as you can, like in policies, change what you can in policies, and then kind of building your way up seems to me to be a smarter way of doing it. I totally agree with this issue of, do we as a commission listen to grievances or appeals as they're defined in the charter? And that is a charter provision, that we are to listen to appeals of officers that are appealing a decision of being fired, of being suspended for more than 14 days without pay, or demoted. And so if any of those three things occur, then we are supposed to hear that appeal. Since that is the case, then it would be inappropriate for us to give input on the case to tell the chief what we think the chief should do on that case, because, after all, we might one day be hearing the appeal. So one or the other needs to be the thing. Either we have a conversation and we can tell you what we think, or we hear the appeal, one or the other, but not both. And right now it's a little bit uncomfortable, because I think in the one case I'm familiar with, we recused ourselves from giving input. We listened to a circumstance, recused ourselves from giving input in the event that we heard a grievance or appeal from whatever the decision was going to be. And that seemed comfortable to me, but it should be, I think, one way or the other way. So I'm really skeptical about the monitor idea, only because I think that creating a new position when we don't have any full-time commission members to supervise a person seems tricky to me. And so I just don't know how that would work as a practical matter. But I totally have an open mind to learning more on that issue and how it would work. Not so much what their duties are or responsibilities would be, but how would it actually work to have this employee of the commission. And so those are my thoughts. Do you want to talk
Thank
about
you.
this?
Yes, I was just going to quickly, I just want to take a few notes as well, and I took a few notes. So Commissioner Oski, I just have a question, follow-up question to your comments. Does that mean that you would want a charter change?
I don't think we need a charter change.
But it is in the charter that, correct me if I'm wrong, fellow commissioners, that the hearing process is, we don't have disciplinary power, but we have the ability to listen to any kind of hearing that if any of the officers have against any discipline that the chief imposes.
It may be authorized, but it doesn't mean that it has to be implemented. So maybe, if the city council wants us to have that role, then they can decide to not amend the charter, or to, I don't have the charter language in front of me, but.
No, I
Yeah.
fully agree with you. I fully agree with you. I'm fundamentally opposed to this commission taking on any disciplinary role whatsoever. I think where I am a little bit, I would agree with you that, we can, even the hearing seems kind of sketchy. I'm skeptical of that too. But if it is in the charter, we can't back away from fulfilling that role. So so I'm willing to, at least as long as the charter dictates that, and we don't make any recommendations to change in charter, I'm willing to accept that as one of our responsibilities. And if anything, if that's the case and city council chooses to give that to us, then I would say, if anything, we may want to fine tune that hearing process. Right now, there is no document that actually says what is the hearing process if a police officer ever wants to appeal the chief's decision. Okay, so maybe that's something I would support, but I would not, I'm completely against just for any disciplinary process whatsoever that this commission engages in. Just to follow up a few things about.
Chair, before we move on, could
Yeah.
I just jump in very
Sure.
quickly to add some clarity? So you're right, that function is in the charter, and actually, it's not delegated by the city council. The legislature has delegated that directly to you folks. So it is in the charter. It is, statutorily, that's your charge under state law. And as far as the process for the hearing, there is a process that's outlined in our contract with the police union. So it's not a perfect process, but there is sort of a procedure for how that should go. There are actually timelines in there for how long they have to file the appeal and things like that. So if there's interest on that, I can get more information.
Yes, we're interested, thank you.
I'm
We would like
looking
more
around,
information.
and I know there are a few commissioners on the commission who have been through that process at least once, but there are a lot of new faces since we've formally gone through that process.
Commissioner Garrison is not here, but he has, yes. But we would like that document very much so. And I agree with Commissioner Oski that the complaint process, and I agree with Commissioner Seguino, the complaint process definitely needs codifying and revisions and more clarity. I am skeptical. Generally, I'm not in favor of hiring a monitor, but I do think that the complaint process can be codified more clearly. I don't know if I have anything else to add to what Commissioner Oski said. Oh, as far as commission role in policy making, I believe it should be done in a collaborative way. And in fact, I think many of these things that are mentioned here in the document can be done collaboratively. The only exception I take are I don't see the commission as participating in any role as far as hiring or promotion is concerned. I don't see, at least speaking for myself, I'm not qualified to be in a hiring, as a hiring authority for Burlington Police Department. I think that's about, the one issue that I fully support is securing funding. I think the commission needs to be given a staff person. A staff person is very important for even sort of day-to-day activities. And I would support the continuing support for funding for our conflict council as well. Let's hear Commissioner Seguino, and then we will.
Thank you. I think it's just important to understand that we live in a negotiated world. I mean, that's when relations are the best, but we are separate entities. And that arm's length relationship needs to be maintained. Doesn't mean that we don't communicate, that we don't sit down and share ideas. And so I think that the newer members of the commission perhaps aren't aware that we do in fact consult with each other on these things. And in fact, the process that exists is that if the department makes changes to policy, the commission must approve those. And in addition, when the commission has developed policy, it consults with the police department about that. It gets input. It doesn't mean that we therefore, split down the middle, but we do get input as is appropriate. With regard to grievances, this is, again, I'm speaking to the newer commissioners, this is the one area in which all commissioners, that previous commissioners and commissioners before the three of you arrived, agreed on that we should not have a role in the grievance process, that should be done under a separate entity, whether it's the Public Safety Committee or the City Council. And so let me speak to the issue of discipline, and I'm going to speak a little bit philosophically about this. A lot of what happened in 2020 was, and actually began earlier than that with the events with regard to Mabior Joke and Jeremy May-Lee, and that was what was perceived as the failure of the police department to hold these officers accountable. And so the argument was that the discipline that was recommended was entirely insufficient, and it was a major factor in fueling the protests of 2020. So I think it's important to understand that community members want the commission to have a role in discipline, to have input into it, not perhaps the final say, but to speak about it. And if you can think of this is not at all in reference to Chief Murad and not speaking personally, but just as an example, imagine that a case comes to us that seems to be very egregious behavior on the part of the officer, and the then chief, whoever that might be, recommends little or no discipline. Then the commission what the word is escaping me in English. Our hands are tied. Maybe that was the expression I'm looking for. So I don't think that avenue should be closed off to us. We might defer. We might decide that we don't want to participate in a decision with regard to discipline. But again, I'm going to remind you all of what both Commissioners Keefe and Oski have said. We have very few cases, if any, that are so egregious that they have even resulted in discipline. But the chief has consulted us about whether that discipline is appropriate. He has given us reasons and prior cases to justify that. And there is a role, there's a role for the community to know that we have some oversight over that we at least have been consulted on that and can provide that input. So again, I don't think it's a significant part of what we do with regard to complaints, but I do think it fills the function of what the community is asking for. With regard to the issue of the monitor, again, this was universally amongst those who are previous commissioners, and except for the newest commissioners, we've had experience with learning about monitors through the NACOL training. We've consulted extensively with the Boulder, Colorado monitor to learn about that position, and we drafted a job description for such a monitor. One of the concerns that I have heard, and in particular at the Joint Committee meeting, but elsewhere as well, is a concern that the Commission is providing input when it's not a professional group. A monitor has professional experience, and as you can see by the turnover on the Commission, having new commissioners without historical memory or experience with some of these issues can be problematic at times. So having a monitor who doesn't necessarily have to be full-time, but who has experience in investigations, who can help us understand, review investigations, and a variety of, who is knowledgeable overall, can inform the work of the Commission. And as I just share my perspective on this, and I don't know if it's shared by others, but I feel like the work that we do is pretty extensive, and we really struggle to invest the number of hours in the work of the Commission and do it well. A monitor would alleviate some of that burden. I hope that it would reduce turnover on the Commission and therefore improve the quality of our work. And as I said, provide us the professional expertise that I think the community, at least some members of the community, have expressed that they want to see in a commission. My 2 cents. Thank you.
Commissioner Cox, Commissioner Keefe. Commissioner Cox first. Go ahead. Commissioner Keefe first.
No, just thank you, Commissioner Seguin. I think it's a very eloquent argument in favor of the monitor. I wholly support it. It is, in addition to that level of professionalism and guidance it can provide, as well as historical knowledge and continuity in the process. The police department does the investigation, but still we need to be tracking, we need to be responsive, we need to be communicative. There's a lot of data to manage, to keep on track in terms of ourselves and our review. And our caseload is quite high. If you look at the Vermont State Police Commission, I think they maybe had 6 summaries. Very cryptic, very short, few sentences. Our volume of complaints, and again, they may not be serious, but they do provide an opportunity for learning. It provides dialogue with the community. They need to be taken into consideration. I think the police have done a really great job of giving, the time and effort to investigate these, but keeping pace with that is difficult without someone who's really doing it day in and day out. And I think it could be a part-time position. I don't think it needs to be overly a burden on the city's budget, but I do think it would increase professionalism in terms of what the commission is doing. I think it would allow us to work more efficiently with the police to, provide, reduce their transaction time in terms of providing information to us. So I think there's great benefit to that, and I wholly support considering funding a part-time monitor.
Thank you, Commissioner Keefe. Commissioner Oski?
Thanks. Just a couple follow-ups. I just did read the charter, and I do think that if we don't want to participate in grievances, that there does need to be a charter change, because it is pretty specific. And with regard to discipline, the way I see this is that the mayor and the city council hire the chief. The chief is accountable to the mayor and the city council, and the mayor and the city council are accountable to the voters. If the voters don't believe that the chief is doing a good job with regard to officer discipline, then they vote out the mayor or their city councilors. I still don't, I don't feel like that it makes sense for it to be our role. With regard to a monitor, I forgot to comment on that earlier, and I'm not sure that it would be a pretty part-time position. I'm just not sure that unless it also included some other quality improvement work, or I don't know what is needed, but it seems like to hire somebody to create a position where there's really not, I don't know if it's a full-time job for the Burlington Police Department. I would need to understand that more, kind of how it would work. But I like the idea of whether it's in Burlington or it's statewide, that there's a third party that's available to objectively review officer accountability. And I don't know that it makes sense in this size community to have it be just one for Burlington. I would have to look at the numbers, but I like the idea generally. I'm just not sure that that it could work here.
Thank you, Commissioner Oski. And I briefly want to report, though there's not been any, even that sort of requires a little bit more discussion, is that at the Joint Committee meeting, there was a discussion of a part-time investigator who could help the commission. And I thought that was an idea that I could fully support. And I could actually support the idea of a part-time monitor, but given a choice, I'm more inclined to support a part-time investigator who could address some of these issues of independence, accountability, and transparency. So I'm open to that idea. I really like that idea, but I'd like to see how it gets defined and how we are to even acquire somebody with that kind of expertise. Commissioner Cox.
So my feeling in preparing these notes was that I just don't think that I didn't feel like I was ready to make a decision definitively one way or another on a lot of the issues. I could see, yes, this needs work. Yes, a decision needs to be made whether we're A or we're B on that issue. But some I loved. I'm going like, yeah, we should have some ability to work with the police department on data analysis. I don't think we need a separate data analyst, but I would like to be able to cooperatively talk to the police department and say, I'd be really interested in seeing data on this. Can your guy do that or your person do that? And so there are definitely issues that you raise, like the lessons learned. I love lessons learned. I think any major operation, anytime something goes really right, as well as things that go wrong, to sit down and write out our lessons learned. And I know that just recently, after that incident that was actually by someone from a different police department discharged their weapon, but I felt really good, and I believe the sense in the room was everybody felt pretty good about it, Chief Murad, when you came and you described what your department had learned from that experience, and then steps that you had taken to try to be more careful that that didn't occur again, even though it was not your department's person that did it. And I thought that's just great, because that shows us that you're really paying attention to all of the ways that we can learn something from these experiences. I love that idea, and I love that Commissioner Seguino included that in her comments to the Joint Safety Committee. I would suggest, or what I would like, if people are agreeable, what I'd like to do is maybe break down some of these issues into smaller work groups that we could focus on, and then come back perhaps in a special meeting and say, this is everything that, we've looked at this more in depth. We've sat down and had a conversation with Chief Murad about this and gotten his input, and this is what our work group has come up with. So that's just a way that we could approach this.
Other commissioners have any thoughts on that?
I support that. I think it's a good idea. I think I would encourage commissioners to look at some of the work that the monitor was doing in Boulder, Colorado, and have a better sense of what the workload is in processing these complaints, even if the investigation is done wholly by the police department. But that is something we could discuss as we go forward. But I really do think it was very important, Commissioner Seguino's statement regarding discipline. I have seen, I think there's, that's become a sort of dirty word, and people want to be running away from it. I think it's very clear that the chief has final say on discipline, and that's not going to change. But I fully agree. I think if there is a case in a hypothetical sense that we see some very inappropriate, let's say, discipline that was just not commensurate with the complaint or the egregious behavior was, and the commission simply did not weigh in, I think we would be abrogating our sworn duty as a commission, and I would really hesitate having these very definitive statements that we will do nothing in regards to discipline. I don't think that's why we're here.
So I'll speak to the discipline issue also. I would encourage commissioners to go back and look at the NACOL training, in particular the first one. And civilian oversight bodies are there not only to represent the interests of the community, but also is there for officers. And while we haven't had an example of this, there may be a case in which a chief asks for a discipline that exceeds what the commission believes is appropriate. I would hope that I think that we would be fair-minded in that, and that we would want to be there also in that particular case, that there was excessive to respond to what we perceived as excessive discipline. With regard to the monitor issue, Burlington and Boulder, Colorado actually have a similar number of complaints a year, and they have a full-time monitor. And I'll just say that in the early stages of me being co-chair of the commission and working on these issues, I was on the phone to monitors a lot. That we are still evolving as a body, as a civilian oversight body. And so having access to expertise like that is really fundamental to knowing how to move forward. I mean, literally every situation that came up, we didn't have a practice for it. And I was literally on the phone all the time to NACOL or to a variety of monitors. But, I exhausted my welcome with some of them, understandably, because they had jobs to do. And so an investigator is simply too narrow, although a person who is experienced in investigations can actually be very helpful. They tend to be knowledgeable about this sphere. that can really expand our knowledge in a number of different areas, not just on investigations. I'll just say a few words about the monitors that I have dealt with in smaller communities like ours. They will, for example, monitor investigations. They will find out what has the department done in terms of investigation. Have you spoken to this person? Have you spoken to that person? Have you considered this? Have you considered that? These are things we struggle with because we are still gaining experience. So remember also that we want to be perceived as professional in the eyes of the community. And to the extent that we are not perceived that way, our efficacy is really undermined. So I think that, a way for us to frame this is that we propose that there is a monitor for the commission and that we work out the details. We don't have to have the final details right now. It could be part-time. There's a variety of approaches to this. It would require a little bit more investigation, but I don't think the Joint Committee is looking for a fully defined job description and details. I would encourage you to look at the job description. I think you have the job description that we drafted, and I drafted it in consultation with a Human Rights Commission investigator, as well as a couple of monitors, and NACOL also reviewed that job description, and so it reflects their input as well. Thanks.
So I don't know if there is a motion to discuss this, or we can table that idea of the monitor.
So can we just agree by? I don't know what's appropriate to do in terms of not making a formal motion, just agreeing by consensus that we would split up these issues in some reasonable manner and have people address them in a small working group. So say so-and-so and so-and-so work together on these three issues, and let's, see what we can bang out.
Just to say that I'm not opposed to that idea, but what has been raised in the past when I've proposed that is that the quorum issue and open meeting law. So it would mean that if the small groups got together, they would have to warn the meetings and so forth. So you could consider there to be two people who develop a proposal and bring it back to the commission, something like that. But I guess I just want to be cognizant of open meeting law and what structure you have that promotes efficiency but not exclusion.
I believe even three people would not violate the open meeting law.
Right, and what we can do is have even both of us can sort of bring up these issues as for vote, for sort of, if we want to sort of put it as vote, each of them, and, go with that, because and that could make things very simple. So we would, and whatever is voted, we all agree on, goes to the joint committee as our recommendations. I don't know how people feel about that. We could do that. Just this is more of a bureaucratic point. The joint committee is meeting, I believe, first week of August. But I think they can wait for our recommendation. They have their own work that they're doing as well, so they don't have to hold up everything for us. But we can tell them that we would have a set of recommendations that we all voted on for our next meeting, August 25th, including the monitor, any one of those, and I can list them and go from there. Commissioner Oski, any suggestion?
I think that the council is moving ahead with or without us, and I think the areas that we have consensus on, we can let them know what those are, and the areas that we don't, we can let them know that we don't have consensus on those. The next month is a lot of vacation for me, and I expect others. I'm not sure about the small group idea, and I'm not sure to what end. If that's the consensus of this group, I'm happy to do that, but I feel like there's some clear areas where we agree, and there's some clear areas where we're not in full agreement, and ultimately it's going to be the council that decides.
Just to say that we have two commissioners missing tonight, and I think it would be well advised to have this be inclusive of all commissioners. So I guess, if you don't mind, sorry.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Oski, I don't think the way to frame it to the commission, the joint committee, is that there are areas we don't have agreement on. I think we want to work on those areas. I think hopefully we can go forward with a full slate of recommendations that there's majority agreement on at least. So the idea of articulating where there is agreement for the August meeting sounds good. And precious August vacations aside, I think a small group approach to further discussing the areas in which we're not yet in agreement on would be helpful.
So can somebody mention some of the areas that we are in agreement of then? We can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Why don't we?
I'd like to move that we do this work offline and not in the meeting, but in small groups, and you can make the assignments. And I think that it's a really valid point that there's going to be a lot of issues upon which we agree. And so for those, you could just put them out like a trial balloon to this small group and that small group and that small group. They could discuss it internally in the small group and then decide, yes, that we agree on points 1 through 10. And then those are done, and then what points remain could be further worked. That was a long motion, sorry.
Motion to, on the table, as to work in subgroups and tackle the 16 points that we have there, and come back with, doesn't have to be exactly 16 recommendations, but some version of it for vote. I'm trying to figure out what is the best approach, the most, the most inclusive and expedient. So if people have any other ideas, I will listen to them. But for the time being, that seems to be the motion on the table. Is there a second to that motion? To work in subgroups and come together in August. Okay, second. All in favor? Is that the next step? I'm sort of looking. Second. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right. Motion passes. So we will do so. Me and Commissioner Cox will get together and we will divvy it up, and people have a set of questions that you have circulated. Maybe that could be the point. We'll quickly go over that, and we'll come back with a list of proposals for the August meeting. Okay. All right. Any other thoughts? Go ahead.
I was just going to mention to the chief that you'd be willing to talk to these little small groups on issues where we feel like your input would be super valuable, right?
Of course.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Unless there's any other business. Oh, Commissioner Seguino.
So a couple of things. First of all, I just want to register concern that we have not made progress on the mental health policies that has been on our, not only been on our plate since last year, but we committed to having completed by March. Second is the commission is also required to submit an annual report, and it would be due by July 31st. And third, in August, as I understand it, we'll be getting the data analysis from the city data analyst, and I encourage commissioners to look at the previous reports, on the previous reports as well as the commission comments. So when we get those reports, it's typical for the commission to comment, in particular to highlight various aspects of the data that it considers important, and to send that to the City Council. City Council relies on our oversight and input on these issues to keep them informed about public safety issues.
Thank you, Commissioner Seguino. Are there any other announcements or concerns? If not, is there a motion to adjourn? I move to adjourn. Okay, everyone say aye. a second, second, Commissioner Sequino. Everyone in favor? Aye. See you next month.